Give us a sense specifically of what happens in this shortened parliamentary session. As I understand it, they will convene September 3. They have till September 10. Can you realistically get legislation through that would stop a no-deal Brexit in that time?
Potentially, yes, but it's going to be tough. Don't underestimate the difficulty of getting legislation through in that short time. And that's exactly why Boris Johnson has exercised this sort of dictatorial power of trying to prevent Parliament from meeting long enough to do it. So what's happening at the moment is the opposition parties have all met. Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of the Labour Party, brought all the opposition parties together. They've set up a group working through the detail of how we can achieve it next week. We're working now with senior Conservative MPs. We've seen ex-ministers, cabinet ministers, come out and express their outrage at Boris Johnson's behaviour, and we think there most probably is a majority in Parliament now to secure legislation which will prevent Boris Johnson imposing a no deal. But you're right, the time is incredibly tight. So there's lots of opportunities that Boris Johnson could take to try and prevent it happening. But what's interesting is that there's actually been a popular reaction against his behaviour now, and not just of his traditional opponents in other political parties, but popular reaction on the streets. And we've seen demonstrations yesterday announced within hours of his behaviour being made public, literally hundreds and thousands of people coming out on the streets in city after city in the country.
So your leader, Jeremy Corbyn, said yesterday that he thought it was time for a no-confidence vote. If, in fact, you do not have the time to get through legislation to stop a no-deal Brexit, do you have time for a no-confidence vote? And do you think the votes are there now the way they weren't with Theresa May?
All right, there could be time, but again, it's going to be tight. It's going to be tight, and we know how tough it is, both in terms of the legislative move and for a no-confidence vote as well. But here's the real question, and you've struck on it straight away. Have things moved in Parliament, particularly amongst the Conservative Party members, in a way that they would support either a legislative move or a no-confidence motion? By Boris Johnson's own behaviour, he seems to be welding together an alliance against him, even within his own political party. So I'm increasingly confident now that we could have a majority for the legislative move and maybe a majority on a no-confidence motion.
In the meantime, if Parliament is suspended, are there plans or contingency plans to sort of have Parliament elsewhere during that time? What's your plan for that?
Well, there's a whole range of really creative ideas that have come forward about, yes, of having MPs sitting elsewhere. We've even had our Archbishop of Canterbury come forward with the idea of setting up a citizens' assembly. And again, this is all about trying to reassert the rights, the democratic rights of the people of our country. And as you know, we don't have a written constitution, but we do have constitutional practices that go back centuries. And what Boris Johnson is doing is dictatorially riding roughshod over them. And there's been quite a strong reaction, which I think he's completely underestimated.
Well, we've been talking about the time deadline. That October 31 deadline looms large here. If, in fact, there were a no-confidence vote and it had to go to a general election, could a general election be conducted in time for a new government to be brought in time to beat that deadline?
There could be. There could be, and again it would be tight, but there still could be. But also, as you know, the European Union leaders from our European partners have expressed a view that if there was to be some significant parliamentary move or a general election or a new referendum, they would look at an extension of that deadline. So there's a whole range of opportunities that are open to us now. But the key thing, and as I say, you've struck the nail on the head. The key thing is next week and whether we can get legislation or other measures through Parliament itself. I just say this, if we fail, we'll fail, but if it is as a result of what Boris Johnson's dictatorial overriding of our traditional democratic practices, I think that will bode well for his own standing in the future, and he will not have the moral authority of a normal Prime Minister in this country.